Welcome to the Seahawkers podcast with your hosts, Adam Emmert.
I don't even know if he's aware he's doing it, but at least I know he listens now.
And Brandon Schultz.
The Michael Bennett trade, the Richard Sherman stuff. Brian Cushing visiting Seattle was the worst news.
Go Hawks!
This is episode 195 of the Seahawkers podcast. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers. And joining me, my good buddy, Montana Seahawker Adam Emmert.
How you doing, Brandon? Are you surviving the Hawkpocalypse? Because it's all unraveling. It's all over. Everybody's gone.
Everybody?
Everybody. There's no people on the roster anymore.
Well, as of Thursday, the only one gone that I know of is Michael Bennett. But
wait, no, it's the Hawkpocalypse. That's all I've been hearing about. It's all over. Legion of Boom's done. It's over.
Well, the good thing is to talk about the Hawkpocalypse, we've brought on Danny Kelly from The Ringer, former managing editor of Field Gulls, and he's joining us right off the top of the show. Danny, how's it going?
Well, I'm surviving. Yesterday was kind of stressful and crazy. I tweeted about it. It was like one of those days where you look up and all of a sudden it's 3 o'clock and I haven't even eaten anything because I've just been glued to Twitter watching this drama fest go down. I couldn't believe it that Jeremy Lane's tweet actually did mean something. I was convinced he was just trolling everyone.
Okay, well, let's talk about this because Jeremy Lane's Twitter is what got kind of the whole Hawkpocalypse started. And, you know, I'm not very good at interpreting tweets that I expect words to mean things. And so, like, when I see, I don't know, a couple months back, Cam Chancellor posting an Instagram picture of him with a backpack on, and a Hawks logo. Like, I don't know what that means, other than maybe Cam Chancellor just really likes that picture. And Earl Thomas yesterday putting on a backpack and going for a walk and posting that to Instagram. I don't know what this stuff means. And so when I see Jeremy Lane tweeting, 25, you're into my dog, and that text hurt my heart, I don't know what it means.
Do you think it's this bad with all teams in terms of like the amount of sort of like vague emo social media posts for other teams, or is it just the Seahawks? Because it really feels like the Seahawks are especially, I don't know if they're trolling or necessarily, or that's just like the personality, but they're very like emo and vague and like to get the Seahawks fans worked up into a lather just based on these random little tweets that you don't really know what the hell they mean.
Well, yeah, I think there actually is something to that, Danny. I feel like that this team is kind of a drama-filled team. You have athletes that really enjoy stirring up consternation in the fan base. And that's why you have people like Richard Sherman, when he gets mentioned in all of these trade discussions and all that, not really doing much to quelch things. And in fact, maybe even feeds his mom some bad information earlier in the day. So she, puts out some sort of
Here's the thing. His mom posted on Facebook that she was just going off of the media reports that she had not talked to Richard. So I think a lot of us saw the post from, there's a lot of Seahawks fans that are Facebook friends with Richard Sherman's mom. And so when they saw that, they were like, oh my gosh, it really is happening. But she's going off the same media reports that we all are. So
I don't know if I buy that. I don't know if I buy that.
You don't think so?
I'm with Danny on this.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's probably what Sherman told her to say after she said it, because she was like confirming. It was like, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was like, hey, I'm sad to say Sherman's time is done. It wasn't like, oh, what am I seeing on Twitter? It was like, I'm telling you his time is done.
Yeah.
That's how I read it anyway. But I mean, again, this is like one of those things, like everything is open to interpretation. I'm guessing after kind of everything went down, Sherman was like, well, you guys weren't supposed to say stuff, like it hasn't happened yet. But I'm not even sure Sherman really knew exactly what was going to happen either. It was like one of those things where he had a meeting or a phone call with Carroll and Schneider, and that I think is probably not a normal thing. And he's like, reading between the lines, like, okay, something's going down. So he starts texting his teammates like, so this isn't going well. I'm probably not going to be on the team. So I just wanted to be, wanted to say I'm honored to be your teammate or whatever. Maybe that's like what he said. And it turned into like, well, like you said, the Seahawks are drama. So of course they post everything on Instagram and Twitter and stuff and get everybody worked up. And then Sherman, I guess still didn't really know what was happening. But yeah, that was my read of it. It was like he probably texted some people saying like, this looks like the end. And then of course, they just go straight to social media and turns into this big thing. But yeah, I mean, in the end, it sounds like they are going to release him, though. So it actually was true.
Okay, so I find that interesting, Danny, that you think for sure that he's going to be released, because I honestly don't see that. That still could happen. Don't get me wrong.
It happened with Michael Bennett. You said the same thing there.
Right. I said I could be wrong here, but the idea is this, right? Richard Sherman is his own agent. He's in negotiations with the Seahawks. I think that phone call that went down was Pete and John looking at Richard and being like, hey, man, you're turning 30. You're coming off double Achilles surgery. We're going to ask you to take a pay cut. And he was like, no, I don't want to do that. And they were like, okay, well, we'll look for some trade options. You said, fine. And I think if the Seahawks find a viable trade partner, okay, then maybe they pull the trigger. But I think at the end of the day, it's all going to come down to whether or not the Seahawks are willing to pay Richard Sherman $11 million next year. And for a guy who's still in the prime of his career, who's one of the best corners in the game, I don't think that you just let him go. And then not only that, you brought up before we got on here, Brandon, that there's going to have to be some sort of injury buyout since he is injured. And I imagine that would count against the cap. So that hurts what you would save anyways. I don't know, man. I'm just skeptical that this is the beginning of the end and Sherman's gone for sure. I think this is a negotiating ploy by both Richard Sherman and John Schneider.
Well, I mean, I hope you're right. But at the same time, okay, so a couple of things. I think, Danny O'Neil is already kind of, I don't know for sure if I think he's kind of confirming, but he wrote on Twitter this morning that, as Mike Silver reported yesterday, Seahawks expected to release Richard Sherman this week. And then he posted, it's still very unclear what the whole injury thing means. Like, I don't know what the language in his contract says, but this is from O'Neil. He said, the injury occurred in 2017 and the 2018 league year has begun, or once it does begin, the guidelines for that kind of release are changed. So it's still unclear if they can cut him without having any guaranteeing his contract. So basically, we don't know if there's injury guarantees in the last year of his contract anyway. So long story short, they probably can cut him without guaranteeing his entire contract. I think that's probably part of the reason they're looking to cut him. And my impression is he is going to get cut. But I mean, like you said, it hasn't happened yet. We'll see. And there have been sort of wild about faces with this team in the past, so you never know. But they don't have hardly any cap space at this point, and they have a lot of work to do in a lot of different places. And so I don't think he's going to be ready to play at the beginning of the year. I think that's kind of one of the big things, is like we don't even really know if he'll be able to play this season, like at least in the first half. Yeah, no, that makes some sense. So your sense of it is that Richard Sherman will be cut because of the money, or do you think maybe there's some other reasons there? Because I don't think there's any coincidence in my mind that you ship off Michael Bennett for a bag of peanuts and then basically are saying you're just going to release Richard Sherman. And these two guys happen to be kind of the most vocal, the guys that really stirred up the most controversy. I'm not sure that that's a coincidence. Do you think maybe that has a part to play in this? I think it's mostly the money. I think it's mostly the money with Sherman and the fact that he's injured and they don't think they can count on him at the beginning of the year. Well, I mean, this is my read of it. But I think also there is sort of something to, there was the report from, I think, Rap Sheet the other day that said they were trying to quiet things down. I don't think that has anything to do with the protests or anything like that. I don't think that's what they meant. That's right. Rap Sheet actually said that's not what he meant. I think it's more just like, and this is the reason they changed their coaching staff and kind of they're resetting everything. They want to, I think, and Carroll has always been a big guy in terms of he's really, really believed in messaging all the time. Like, it's like you get indoctrinated into the Pete Carroll system. And I think he wants to, and this is just me speculating, but I think he wants to get the message clarified and get the messaging clarified more. And right now there's just too many voices in the locker room. And like you guys said, they're getting rid of two of the biggest personalities in the locker room right now. And my take on it is it's not necessarily because they were involved in the protests or anything like that. I think it's just they want to clarify the messaging and the leadership and probably make this like base this around, a couple guys, Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner, and take out some of, I guess, the conflicting noise that Michael Bennett and Richard Sherman can make. Now, I don't think that's the top thing. I don't think that's the main reason, but I think it's probably part of it where they're just trying to, I guess, I don't know how to put it other than clarify the messaging and kind of just get back to, I guess, Pete Carroll's roots in terms of, competing and all that.
Well, if you look back at just some of the history with Richard Sherman in particular, just challenging other coaches on the coaching staff.
Yeah.
And, maybe with Ken Norton Jr. coming back to the team and, you're setting the identity maybe around Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright. And Coach Carroll even talked about it at the end of season press conference. He saw the core of this team, and the three players he mentioned were KJ, Bobby, and Earl Thomas. And, those might be your three biggest players that are left when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I think, and it's kind of an interesting thing because obviously there was the beef or whatever between Wagner and Earl Thomas at the end of the year. And so, that, I don't know if that has anything to do with the reason they're kind of shopping Earl Thomas too, apparently. But yeah, I think they're just trying to get back to how they were at the beginning in terms of 2012 to 2015 in just a more unified sort of identity, I guess. I don't really know. To be honest, this is all just speculating because it's a bunch of surprising stuff that's kind of happening all at once, but it says a lot that Carroll fired basically the entire staff, and it was surprising to me that he fired Chris Richard. It wasn't surprising that he fired Tom Cable, but the fact that he moved on from Bevel too, and we're hearing things about how he wants only one guy in Russell Wilson's ear, and that's Schottenheimer. He wants just this, I guess more concise chain of command or something like that. And so I think that's kind of a big part of it. Again, that's just simplifying the chain of command, simplifying the hierarchy, simplifying the message, getting back to basics, getting back to football. I think that's kind of what the basic, sort of goal is this offseason.
Yeah. So what you're kind of getting at, I think here, Danny, when you're saying clarify the message, I think part of it is you've got these older players, these veteran players that are huge personalities that muddy up the waters, but they're also maybe not as hungry as, say, younger players are when they first come into the league, like Richard Sherman was when he came in as a late round pick. So I wonder if kind of the idea, too, is you get rid of some of the older, more mature players because Pete Carroll's messaging works better with younger players who are, more malleable.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at it, and I think even Doug Baldwin said this a few times, on the record, it's you can only hear the same thing from Carroll so many times before it just starts to get repetitive. And like I said, Carroll is all about messaging. I think he chooses his words extremely carefully, and he really believes in the power of how he conveys everything. So yeah, you have to buy into his program. You have to be indoctrinated into his system, his program. And I think, the longer you've been in it, it tends to just lose its, power and things like that. I think he wants to kind of get back to guys that are fully buying in. This is all very much psychology and stuff like that. But I mean, I think that Carroll really buys into the importance of all that stuff. And obviously they have a sports psychologist on staff. They're very much about, positive thinking, positive visualization, all that stuff. I think it's all connected. I think this is Carroll trying to get back to what I feel like he probably feels like he lost some of that control and some of that identity and vibe and stuff that he had instilled in the team early on. I think he's probably trying to kind of hit reset, reboot. And, obviously they're not going to get rid of all their good players, but like you said, get rid of some of the older guys that have been around longer and sort of try and get back to the young, hungry guys that are willing to buy in and really go 100% into the Pete Carroll program.
Well, and reboot is the word that you used even in your latest article on the Ringer. The one Seattle's Legion of Boom era is over. And Adam, this is kind of an ongoing theme, I think, that we've talked about in the offseason of whether or not you would consider this a rebuild or a reboot. And clearly, so you've said what you think it is. Now, I want to go back a little bit to your reaction on the Michael Bennett trade, because Michael Bennett traded to the Eagles. They get a 5th round pick. And I don't know if we know if it was the 5th-round pick that the Seahawks originally sent over for Matt Tobin. But we know they're getting a 5th-round pick, and they send a 7th-round pick, and we get one of their receivers who we had never heard of before.
Literally never heard of them.
Yeah. What was your feeling when you saw that trade go down? Do you think the Seahawks got an okay deal?
No. Yeah. I mean, I think it was a Band-Aid move. It was pulling off a Band-Aid. It's not going to look good right now, but they save, $2.2 million. I guess that could come in handy when they're trying to re-sign somebody. And again,
and really, is it 2.2? Because when you count the $500,000 of the new receiver that you're getting,
right.
It's really not that much.
Yeah, it's chump change, and that's the reason all the fans in Philly are so excited. It's like, wow, we got this great player. I mean, I don't know if you'd call him great anymore, but he's definitely a really good, solid pass rusher, which is one of the most valuable things you can have in football, right? I mean, he was top 10 pressures last year. That's all you really need to know. So in the long term, I think they don't have to worry about his long-term contract, which was like $21 million over 3 years or whatever left on his deal. So I guess there's that. But I mean, yeah, to me, it was just a Band-Aid move. They're like I said, they're rebooting. They're starting from scratch. They're getting younger. They're doing all that stuff. And I definitely would not call it a rebuild, because I mean, any team that has a all pro caliber quarterback or Pro Bowl at least caliber quarterback is not going to be in a rebuild situation. I think they'll still be able to compete. It's just a matter of, I guess, how different they're going to be. I mean, in theory, they could be better if they hit on the draft and they find a couple guys that really can contribute from year one. I mean, look at what the Saints did last year with their draft class. Not that the Seahawks will be able to do that because they don't have nearly as much draft capital, but I mean, if you get a guy or two in free agency and then you hit on a couple of guys early in the draft, I mean, look at the impact that Shaquem Griffin, had on the first year in that defense. And, you find a couple of guys like that and all bets are off. But right now, I mean, it looks like they're kind of taking a step back to kind of reset. And I don't think it was necessarily they didn't win the trade, but I think it was a trade that they wanted to make just because of all the reasons that we kind of spelled out already, like, just kind of clarifying who they want to be, I guess, or whatever. But yeah, my first reaction was like, holy crap, they made the Seahawks give them a 7th-round pick also. Like, that is the most catfish move I've ever seen in my life. Like, oh, so we good? Like, we're going to give you this Pro Bowl player for nothing? No, actually, we need you to give us a 7th-round pick too.
Yeah, like, a little less than nothing. Ridiculous. Yeah. Thanks for the deal. But I guess on the other hand, this deal makes a little sense to me in this sense, where Michael Bennett is now 32 years old. He's been battling, chronic toe and foot issue basically for the last 2 years. I mean, there's going to be a year when it all just falls off completely. Right. And totally. You see, one of the things that the Patriots do really well is they get rid of guys a year early and get at least something for them. And I guess in the back of my mind, the only thing that makes sense to me about this trade would be that thinking is that you're getting at least something back for Michael Bennett, and he's on the edge of that cliff. That's the only thing I could think was going through John Schneider's mind.
I mean, it's like trying to predict the stock market, right? It's like you never know when there's going to be this whatever correction or recession or whatever. And so like I guess they're probably, like you said, banking on the fact that the cliff is somewhere right around like in front of them, right. And Bennett is of the age where, the performance can fall off quickly. So yeah, he dealt with plantar fasciitis. Does anyone know how to say that, actually?
Plantar fasciitis.
Plantar fasciitis.
Oh, okay, show off.
I say it, so I know how to say it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Plantar. Anyways,
plantar fasciitis,
which I've heard, I mean, obviously you can confirm, is one of the most painful things ever. So it's probably not one of those things that goes away right away. And so,
Now, I'm not a professional athlete, but I hobbled around for, 2 months. So...
Yeah. And I think isn't it one of those ones that you can easily re-aggravate?
Yeah,
absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, there's definitely other factors at play here, and the age is a big thing, and the injury history is a big thing, and yeah. So I mean, it does. I think you can rationalize it for sure, but to me, it's like the thing that weighs more in my mind is he's a very good. He's still a like I said, a top 10 pass rusher that you're giving away. So it kind of stings. But I do see sort of the rationale of it also.
I wonder if this whole reboot that is going on here was accelerated with the idea that Cam Chancellor and Cliff Averill will not be with the team going forward, that those were career-ending injuries. I kind of have this feeling that if they had gotten through the season last year, relatively healthy, maybe they had an off-season surgery or something, but nothing that's anything close to the type of injury that they have now, that if this team wouldn't be just rolling the dice with the same set of guys. Like, I feel like those two guys being gone permanently really just jump-started this into overdrive.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at it like, okay, well, most of the band is breaking up. We might as well just, pull the Band-Aid off. I do look at it as like a Band-Aid thing. Obviously, we don't know for sure what's happening with Cam and Cliff, but I think the odds are very, very high, like 80 to 90% that they're both done. And so, yeah, I mean, it's probably one of those things where like the nucleus is already falling apart. Like, we might as well just kind of, like, again, it's say the same word again, but it's like reboot the defense, like go young, play young guys. I mean, John Schneider said it at the combine, like they were at their best 2012 through 2015 when they were playing quite a few young guys, and a lot of those guys were on their rookie contracts, and they're fast, physical, healthy for the most part, and all that stuff is kind of related to age. And so, we don't really know much about kind of the younger guys like Delano Hill or whoever else they have in mind to kind of like come in and take over. But we didn't know much about Richard Sherman when they first drafted him either. So you just never really know. I will say, and this is kind of something that I heard going into last season a lot, like it was on the rumor mill and, talking to different people that kind of are in the know with the Seahawks, that the team was looking at 2017 as kind of like the last hurrah with this defense. And like, let's go all in. Let's try and win the Super Bowl while we still have the core guys in this defense. I mean, I think the moves and the way that they treated the season really kind of confirmed what I was hearing. Obviously it's not like rocket science. They kind of went all in, right? Yeah. And traded for Sheldon Richardson and, brought Dwayne Brown in when Fan got hurt. Like, they were like, okay, this is our window. We want to try and win the Super Bowl this year. We have a Super Bowl caliber roster and a team, but it all just kind of fell apart when everyone got hurt, and so it just didn't really work out. So to me, it's not that surprising also that they're kind of just like blowing things up and kind of trying to start over, because I think that the team was kind of looking at this like as the last chance with that core nucleus of guys.
Well, and now you mentioned that John Schneider, kind of that takeaway from the combine of really wanting to go back to that idea of being young on the defense. That's really resonating now, especially in light of getting rid of Michael Bennett and the talk about Richard Sherman. You were actually there at the combine. Were there any other things that were kind of big takeaways for you there?
With Seahawks in general, I mean, obviously there was a lot of rumors going around with trades and stuff. Brady Henderson, I think, broke the news that the Seahawks were shopping Michael Bennett. And, after that, we all kind of were like, wow, this is kind of crazy. Like, it's actually happening. And my takeaway from the combine was it was, and I wrote about this, I think, on like Friday or Saturday of the combine. It was a lot more hot stove league-y feel at the combine than ever before. Like, teams are trading more. And I think we've seen that. Like, there's more trades at this time of year than seemingly ever before. And teams are kind of realizing that this is a good way to upgrade your team. There's more cap space to take on guys on veteran contracts, things like that. And so it felt more like there was more rumors going on with trades. I think the other takeaway that I had was just talking to people that the Earl Thomas stuff was potentially legitimate, because I didn't really want to believe it. I was like, he's like their linchpin of their defense and he's really, really good. He's still young and all that. But I think kind of the impression I got from everybody was that I didn't get any confirmation that they're shopping him, but it was like, basically everyone was like, yeah, I could believe it. and it kind of like changed my mind a little bit, because I think, if you look at what Earl's done in terms of going into the Cowboys locker room and all this kind of crazy stuff, but I think that they really do kind of approach this offseason with the thought that pretty much everyone's on the table except for Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner. And, make us an offer and we'll tell you yes or no. And if they got an offer for a first round pick and something else, maybe they would actually consider it with Earl, because, it's not like he's old, but he's 28 or 29. He's, I guess the cliff is on the horizon somewhere. But yeah, so I don't know. That was kind of my takeaway, that it was more, there was a lot of trade rumors happening. People were speculating, and the Earl Thomas news was kind of actually like people were buying into that it was actually legitimate, because I think the Seahawks are just kind of in that mode right now where anything's on the table.
Now, being at the Combine, what did you find it difficult for yourself just to like not continually follow around Shaquem Griffin like everywhere he went?
It's so easy to be a fan of that guy. I mean, he blew the doors off the Combine, really. I mean, he was, I think, the star of the Combine. Obviously, there's obvious questions of, would this work in the NFL? Because I don't think it's ever really been done. I mean, obviously, you can look at Jason Pierre-Paul, but he still has his hand. He's missing a couple of fingers, but he still has his hand. And obviously, the tackling is a big deal in football. I don't think the ball skills is necessarily quite as big of a deal, because he has shown he can catch, even though he's just practiced his whole life, so he knows how to do it. But the tackling thing is important, and so it's kind of one of those questions like, will this work in the NFL? But I think he's just one of those guys. He's like Russell Wilson. I mean, he's never let that be an impediment to him making plays and doing his thing. And obviously I'm referencing Wilson's height, but I think he's just one of those guys that is so good and so talented and so driven that it's not going to matter. I'm really excited to see where he lands. I hope it's with the Seahawks, because they were actually the only team, I think, that interviewed him officially.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know if that means anything, but I think it does. You can only meet with like 60 players, and there's like 300 some players at the Combine. So it means they're certainly interested in him. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how early he goes, if he goes in the mid rounds, or I think a lot of people are kind of expecting he might go undrafted because of that. But after running 4.3 or whatever, 4.37, at what did he weigh in at? 230, 220 something, 225. But man, that is just ridiculous. And so I could see Pete Carroll really liking a guy like that and trying to fit him into the defense.
I'm in love with the idea of drafting Griffin. I think if he had his other hand, he'd easily be a slam dunk first round draft pick.
I think he would be. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is I thought you put it really well, Danny. I mean, he's done this his whole life this way and has been very successful everywhere that he's gone. So I don't, it's hard for me to believe that he wouldn't be successful at the next level too. But speaking of linebackers, the Seahawks bring in Brian freaking Cushing the other day. Are you as appalled by that as I am?
I don't know. I don't get it. I don't think it makes any sense. He doesn't, I guess maybe like as a backup. I don't know what they're looking at him as.
And he's just a douche.
To me, it was by far the worst news that came out yesterday. The Michael Bennett trade, the Richard Sherman stuff. Brian Cushing visiting Seattle was the worst news.
Yeah. He's had a lot of injuries over the last couple of years. He's been suspended at least once, right, for PEDs.
Yeah,
I think twice, because he was up to 10 games from last year.
So I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. I just don't think it makes any sense, really, for the Seahawks. I don't. Maybe this is what happens in the NFL, and maybe they'll end up signing him. But like guys who know each other sometimes will just say, "Hey, yeah, come visit. We'll get your name out there. It'll create some buzz. You're going around visiting teams. Maybe that will drum up some interest, and you do that as like a favor for agent or whatever." Obviously, Carroll and Cushing go way back. Maybe it's one of those things where it's just like, "Hey, come on over. We'll hang out and catch up on the kids and stuff, and that way your name will be in the news and kind of like, create some buzz or whatever."
Sure.
It might be that, but it also could be, like you said, or it could be that they're actually interested, and that just to me doesn't make really any sense. But they don't have a lot of depth at linebacker, that's for sure. I mean, I don't really see how he's going to be the answer to that, but I don't think Will Hoyt is probably the answer, and they haven't really drafted many guys to do that lately. Obviously, they got rid of Kevin Pierre-Louis, and he's sort of emerged in Kansas City. But yeah, they just don't have a ton of options in depth on the linebacker.
If nobody else is interested in Brian Cushing, then maybe that could be.
No, I don't want that dude on the Seahawks. He's just not a good person. I just don't want him on the team. Like, it's that simple. I mean, I just, that's not the type of personalities that they talk about bringing in, you know?
Yeah, I understand. Now, how, with free agency coming up this week, Danny, how active do you think that the Seahawks are going to be?
Well, I mean, it depends on obviously what happens with Sherman. If they release Sherman, they'll have a lot more room to work with. I think they need to add, they still need to add offensive linemen. I wrote an article this week. It'll go up tomorrow at the Ringer, kind of connecting one free agent to every NFL team. And for the Seahawks, I was just looking at a couple of guards, Josh Sitton and Justin Pugh, because both of those guys are, they're connected to Solari. They have, history in his scheme. I think we saw this when Cable came in. Like, you bring in guys that know your scheme so they can kind of teach it to the other guys. And the Seahawks offensive line is terrible. I mean, we know this is like the long-standing problem. And so getting a good veteran, I think like a guy like Pugh, where you come in, put him in between Dwayne Brown and Justin Britt, and that left side is all of a sudden way better solidified than before. And I mean, obviously you have to worry about what's going on with Posich and Ifedi on the right. I don't know what's going to happen there, but at least kind of solidifying the left side with some veteran presence and guys that can play that system, I think that could help. And it's like one of those things that it's not going to like solve everything, but it could help a lot. And so I'd like to see them do something like that, get Josh Sitton or Justin Pugh in and add some experience and just guys that know how to block. Like, it seems like they were just spending the last like 5 years trying to teach guys how to be offensive linemen. Like, just get some offensive linemen that know how to play offensive line. That's what I want. So,
my God, get out of my head, Danny. Like, that's basically what I've been yelling about on this podcast for the last 3 years.
Yeah, I get it because the college game has changed and it's just like you have to kind of teach guys the fundamentals when they get up here and all that. It's like, I get that, but
yeah, but all the other teams have been dealing with that too and still come up with offensive lines. So to me, that's one that falls flat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I hope that they change their philosophy and change their scheme. I'm really excited about the thought that, and I think Carroll said this at the Combine, like they're planning on doing more stuff with their actual scheme, which means like they're going to do more power. They're going to do more like, man blocking stuff. Like right now they've been a zone blocking team primarily, almost 100% of the time. Like one of the most high usage of zone blocking in the NFL, I think. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm not going to say that zone blocking doesn't work anymore, but it's one of those things where there's so many really highly athletic interior defensive linemen these days that those guys can really, mess up your zone blocking stuff by just slicing through the line right away. Like really catfish everything up. Can I say catfish on this? I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine.
It really just catfish up everything. I mean, if you look at Michael Bennett, when he like penetrates, when you're doing a wide zone run, like if you get penetration right away, it's dead. And we saw that so many times. I mean, I don't know if you guys watch Ben Baldwin's cut-ups of the offensive line blocking on Twitter. It's like, oh my God, this is. I
try to avoid them, but it's hard not to.
Right. It's infuriating to watch because it's just guys getting through the line every catfish play. And so to me, it's like the way to fix that, not to fix it, but the way to improve that is mixing up what you do, keeping defensive linemen on their toes. And that means when you get guys that are really, really excited to slice through the line, you trap them. And that's like what, or you pull a guard around him and you let him get into the backfield where you're going the other way. You have to keep them on their toes. You can't let them just be attack mode all the time. And that's where plays like traps and wham plays and slice plays with tight ends, where your blocks are coming from all different angles, it just makes it harder on a defensive lineman. I think the way that the Seahawks run is like too predictable, and it just allows for guys to be too aggressive. Obviously, there's major issues with the personnel too, and those guys are just not making blocks. So I don't think. Well,
not to worry, Danny, because George Fant is coming back this offseason. He'll solve everything.
I wonder what they'll do. I wonder what the story with him is. Like, can he play on the right? Is that? I'm hoping that's something that they can try to do. Or is
he can play in the post. That's where he can play. He's a basketball player. I don't need him on my offensive line.
Yeah, but do you want to play Ifedi?
I mean,
is that a better option?
Yeah, at least he's played the position. And I think, towards the end of the year, he improved a little bit with his penalties. He really struggled when Russell would run around and, had a hard time knowing when to disengage. And he did get better at that. I think he suffers a little from the Breno Giacomini knucklehead syndrome, where it's just going to take a year or two for him to work that out. But eventually Giacomini became a really solid right tackle. I do kind of believe in Ifedi.
Well, that's good to hear. Not sure I share your enthusiasm. I'm open to it. You can pan
me. It's fine. It's fine, Danny. You can tell me I'm an idiot. It's okay.
I'm open to it. I'm open to the idea that he could develop into a good player. I'll put it that way. I don't think he's a good player right now, but that's not high level analysis.
I mean, not everybody on your offensive line can be awesome. Like,
just be solid. Yeah.
Well, your first round picks ought to be.
Your first round picks ought to be.
And that's the other thing that kind of like makes me really excited about the idea that they're going to do some power stuff. They're going to change up their schemes. It's like, to me, in a wide zone scheme, your right tackle is important because usually if you're running to the right, he's the guy that's like setting the tone for that run. Like if he misses his block, the run is dead. And so I think by mixing up what they're doing, they're not putting quite as much the onus on him to kind of, set the tone on the right side. Make sure he's not. So like if he gets blown back into the backfield off the snap, like the play dies. So if you get more runs kind of using power in the middle and draw play, or not draw plays, but counter plays and things like that, where you're not putting quite as much of the onus on him to make his block every single time, I think that probably could help too.
Well, the other part of the running game, and we see that Jonathan Stewart could be visiting the Seahawks. He's supposed to be coming to the team. How are you feeling about what might be going on at running back? Because, I mean, again, you're bringing in an older guy, but it's free agency season. You got to think that they're going to be looking at the draft too. Is this the case of, here's a guy who, he's going to be 31 years old. He might have a year left. I'm kind of torn. I don't think the signing an older guy like Stewart necessarily makes much sense. I don't think he's a guy that can do a lot of. It's kind of like the same as Lacey. Like he can do a lot when you have blocking in front of him. And he's like a tackle breaker on the second level and things like that. But he's not like a creator where he's going to make the offensive line better. I think the Seahawks issues are rooted in the offensive line. And so you need a guy who can create, who can explode, and who's got a lot of juice in his legs. Personally, that's what I believe. I don't necessarily think it makes a lot of sense to get a guy like Stewart. To me, is a sustaining back, right? Like you're going to give him 25 carries a game and that's how he's going to make his money. But like the Seahawks, as we saw last year, like the Seahawks can never, and I hate using this term, but they could never establish the run. Like they never had an opportunity really to run 25 times a game because they just sucked at it so much. So I don't know how Stewart is going to really provide that. It all starts up front. Well, Danny, I really want to thank you for coming on the show this week. Check you out on The Ringer at Danny B. Kelly on Twitter. And it's good to have you back after I don't think we've had you on since your time at Field Gulls.
It's been a while. Yeah. So thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, a big thanks to Danny Kelly for coming back on the show, talking a little bit of Seahawks with us, talking a little combine, talking some free agency. This Richard Sherman stuff, though, Adam, I can give you two reasons why you don't cut Richard Sherman.
Mm-hmm.
And it's San Francisco 49ers and the LA Rams. Because if you cut Richard Sherman, that immediately, the 49ers are looking for a corner. They have a ton of cap space. That's really the one place where I don't want to see Sherman go, and also the Rams.
Yeah, I'd be less stoked to see him go to the Rams. That would definitely frustrate me more than that. But than the 49ers. But I'd say the 49ers would be a extremely likely landing spot for Richard Sherman, considering, just like you said, all the cap space that they have. And, you see John Lynch, he's making moves. He's ready to go.
Yeah.
Seeing him in red and gold, I can already feel the vomit coming up in my throat.
That's why you don't do it. You keep him on the roster just for that.
Well, I
mean, you can't make your decisions on where a guy is going to end up or may end up, but partially. I mean, if he's going to end up within the division, that is something you have to take into account. It's not a throwaway thought. But also you have to do what's best for the team. And Correct. When you think about, okay, $11 million, we've talked about it before. You have Byron Maxwell, who played pretty well in Richard Sherman's absence. You have Deshaun Shedd, who's coming back off of injury. If you think that you can get both those guys for, half as much as what you were paying Sherman, and then you have another $5 million on the in salary cap, Maybe what this tells us, Adam, is that salary cap actually it's actually there.
It actually
and it matters.
exists. Yeah. Well, I mean, I know it does. And I always jokingly say that it's magic, but there's always ways to massage it. No doubt about it. The interesting thing is one of the ways to decrease his cap number for the year would be to extend his contract.
And why is that not on the table?
Which nobody's saying it's not on the table. Let's make sure we understand that too. Yeah. I mean, this is a negotiation going on between Richard Sherman and John Schneider. And, if they looked at him and said, hey, I'm going to need you to take a pay cut. He goes, all right, here's the thing. I'm not taking less money, but if you want to extend the contract out, we'll reshuffle some money around. Okay, now we have something to talk about. That might be more palatable to the Seahawks. And that could be a case in which Richard Sherman stays. I guess to me, I'm not on he's definitely gone bandwagon. I'm definitely not on he's absolutely staying bandwagon, but all the possibilities are on the table, just like your favorite man, Ian Rappaport, tweeted out the other day. But it's not even close to a foregone conclusion, I don't think.
Yeah, that Rappaport tweet was one of my favorites, literally explaining what could happen with every single player in every single offseason. Here it is, at Rap Sheet, not one of the fake ones that are out there. Following Seahawks cornerback Richard Sherman's meeting with Team Brass, they are expected to explore trade options, I'm told. They could trade him or release him or potentially keep him, likely at a different salary.
No way. It could be any one of the possibilities, really.
They could potentially keep him at the same salary. They could potentially re-sign him. See, he left off two key things.
Was his next tweet, every time I roll a dice, I could maybe get a 1. I could get a 2. All the numbers to 6.
All of them.
Yeah.
Definitely not 7, though.
Definitely not 7. That's the one thing he could confirm. It's just some of the stuff, man, that people put out is unbelievable.
I think that comes from those who feel like they have to say every thought that comes into their mind and put it out on Twitter.
Well, I think the news, especially sports reporting, that's kind of how it's become, right? I think the guys that really get the shine are the guys that are, breaking stuff before they even know 100% for sure, but they instantaneously get it out on Twitter. It's diarrhea of the Twitterverse, you know? And so I think they're a little bit of a victim of what the industry has become. With that said, I wouldn't want to be that guy still. I would have to find another way as a reporter.
I wouldn't want to be that guy. And I think it does give you a certain level of shine, but I think it also, for the people who don't do it, I tend to see those type of people as being more credible. And when they do say something, those are the people that I actually listen to and not people necessarily like Ian Rappaport.
When your primary way to reach your audience is via Twitter, then I know that you're less reputable than maybe somebody who, writes for an established publication or has a large radio show or, works for a large network, say like ESPN, something like that.
Yeah.
If the main way that you engage with your audience, the way they consume your content is through Twitter, you probably don't know crap. Twitter is the most vapid piece of crap situation that's ever been invented. I freaking hate Twitter.
And Rappaport even pointed to, he retweeted Jeremy Lane's tweets as some kind of evidence that Sherman was having discussions with his teammates about leaving.
Right.
And to me, if that's what you're pointing to as quote unquote evidence, you're digging pretty deep there. We don't know what Sherman's text message, if it was even a text message from Sherman to Lane that he was tweeting about. You don't know. You can speculate.
Yeah. And that's one of the things when Danny was saying, well, is this team just more prone to drama? Well, I think yes, a little bit. But also the other factor is this. The news media has been trying to trade Richard Sherman off of the Seahawks for 2 off seasons now.
Yeah.
The national media, that's been their agenda. That's what they're trying to do. And so for him to actually be traded would then validate 2 off seasons of running their mouth.
We've been telling you this was coming.
Oh boy, howdy. So at the end of the day, I think that it gets hyped up even more. It just even the little things like Jeremy Lane's tweet, because they're just frothing at the mouth to be right about this rather than being like, look, To me, it makes more sense to keep him, even at his full cap number, than it does to release him or trade him. Those other things could happen, but in my mind, the most likely scenario is that he's on the team next year.
It's what I want to see. I also think that Seattle would benefit more by having him on the team next year. But I think with Michael Bennett, they would have had benefits for keeping him around too, because just like you're not going to get the level of production from any of the guys on the team right now or with a draft pick. And with Sherman, if you release him, you're really getting nothing. At least if you keep him on till next year under the same contract number, you're looking at a potential comp pick. If you were to re-sign him and structure his contract in a way to where maybe a trade does look a little bit, maybe you could get something for him, just like you got with Michael Bennett this year. If you structure the contract in a way to where you have a roster bonus coming up, like Michael Bennett was supposed to have, structure it in a way that it makes it a team-friendly situation for a team to give up a draft pick for a player like Richard Sherman. And then maybe you can see what you have with, because you don't really know how a guy like Deshaun Shedd is responding from injury. You know, he was just barely about to come back at the end of the year. It buys you a little bit of time.
I guess the idea is, do you want to compete next year or not?
Or you don't think you can.
Right. And if that's your answer, then okay, then unload him for what you can. But at the end of the day, left corner is one of the premium positions in all of football. And when you have a top 5 guy at that position, top 3 guy, you don't just let him walk for nothing, no matter the cap hit. Like a guy like Michael Bennett, playing defensive end, while in an important position on the hierarchy of important positions, defensive end, I don't know, is it in the top 10? It's probably close, probably like 7th or 8th most important position, but not nowhere near what quarterback or left corner or free safety is. Having Michael Bennett gone, you can get 85% of his production from Frank Clark, Deion Jordan. And I think a lot of them moving Michael Bennett is the fact that they really feel like they hit on Deion Jordan.
Sure.
I think that plays a large part of it. And I think the other part of it too is, we talked about the cliff that is eventually coming for Michael Bennett of physical production dropping off. Boy, didn't it feel like to you that you saw a little bit that last year? He got a lot of pressures.
You look at the Arizona game.
He missed a ton of finishes.
When he got outrun by the backup Arizona quarterback, when he was trying to chase him down. Yeah. And supposedly that dude had a torn ACL or partial tear of his ACL and still
some
outran
Bruce
Michael
Arians
Bennett, whatever it was. But at that moment, still, that's a play that you see Michael Bennett finish and where you could point to and go, yeah, maybe the end of the cliff is coming up quick.
Whereas you saw before the injury, Richard Sherman performing at his customary Pro Bowl level, all-pro level.
So if you take into account the business aspect of it, and you just think, okay, here's guys that are, engaging in business with John Schneider and Richard Sherman. John Schneider, as the GM of the team, he wants to pay them less money than they're worth. And coming off of an injury, that's one way to say, we don't think that you're really going to be worth what we are set to pay you next year. And then as a player, you have to take that into account and say, well, if you release me, I'm going to go out and get paid somewhere else. So good luck. And these are just things that both of them have to consider. It's a chess game. This could be all just part of the game, and it's being played out. And maybe Michael Silver is right, and that the Seahawks are just hours away from releasing Sherman. But I do think that there's a lot to be considered.
I think there is too. And look, I just don't understand what leverage John Schneider has here. In a lot of ways, when it comes
other than saying that I'm going to release you, that really is the only leverage.
Right, exactly. So yes, you're going to talk that game, right? If you're in negotiations, because
then Richard Sherman has to think, oh well, maybe do I have to sell my house? Do I, and look at other places to live in another city? I mean, you have to.
And the fact of the matter is, if you're Richard Sherman, you're looking at it and you'd be like, okay, I'm supposed to make $11 million this year.
Yeah.
What do you think he's going to get if he hits free agency? Do you think it's going to be more than $11 million for the year? I'm going to go out on a limb and say, hell yes.
And it might be, with him being his own agent, let's think about the type of deal Russell Okung got. There might be escalators within his contract to say, if you play 16 games, if you
he won't have any of that crap. He'll get a bunch of guaranteed money. He's Richard Sherman.
Well, and when you look at a team like the San Francisco 49ers, who have a ton of cap space,
yep,
I absolutely think that they'd be willing to give him that money.
Oh, yeah, and more.
Probably, yeah.
And that's just it. Like, so when John Schneider looks at you and you're Richard Sherman, and he says, I'm going to need you to take a pay cut. And he goes, no. And he goes, well, I'm going to release. And you'd be like, okay, you getting them checks then? Because I'm going to get paid. I'm going to get paid. So I don't know. It just, the whole releasing him thing just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, especially because I don't really see the free agent offensive lineman that you're going to go out there and spend, top shelf money on.
The only case that I can see making for freeing up cap space is maybe you spend it on Sheldon Richardson. Maybe you spend it on extending Frank Clark.
Yeah.
Investing it in the defensive line and then re-signing Justin Coleman, or tendering him as a restricted free agent. You still have to tender Deion Jordan as a restricted free agent. So you have a lot of guys that are in your own team that you haven't taken care of, that haven't counted against the salary cap yet. And maybe that's where you need that money, because they are spending a lot of money on defense right now when you're getting rid of some of these, the top level players in terms of your salary cap. It's really where you have to look at making cuts the most.
Well, then you have to ask yourself, do you get 85% of the production of Richard Sherman out of Byron Maxwell, Shaquem Griffin, Justin Coleman and company? And then whatever draft pick they bring in or free agent?
Yeah.
I mean, do you for half the money? Maybe you do.
Yeah,
and then at that
85%
point,
85% of Sherman, maybe that's what we saw with Maxwell last year.
I would say that's a fairly close evaluation, 85% of Richard Sherman. He actually played fairly well.
And you're probably getting him for half.
A bargain.
Yeah.
I can't see another team paying him. We've gone into that a million times. So it's an interesting situation. It bears watching. I hope everybody doesn't get too freaked out. I mean, I see.
Maybe we all got it out of our system when it all looked like it was actually happening.
Right.
And so it won't be quite the emotional weight that it will if it actually happens.
I don't know. I guess I'm still entirely hopeful he's going to be on the team. And I feel sunny optimistic about it. I really do.
Well, free agency is coming up, and the Seahawks have a lot of players out there. One of the guys that we've talked about a lot, wide receiver Paul Richardson. They do get a speedy receiver in the deal with Michael Bennett. Apparently ran sub 4.40. Right. A guy who's been at least working in the league now for a while. And I've always said that I think receivers, once they've had a couple of years of NFL experience under their belt, that's when you really start to see them kind of ramp up in terms of their production. I don't expect him to be Paul Richardson necessarily, but here's a guy that could maybe be Ricardo Lockett.
Sure. A lot of people look at Paul Richardson like he's Jerry Rice, which I find fascinating. Like, he's a pretty good receiver. I think there's a lot of people out there that do Paul Richardson things. Like, I mean, one of the things that makes Paul Richardson so good in so many people's minds, there's some of the spectacular catches, right? And that's cool. Don't get me wrong. But, only 60 odd some catches over the last 2 years. And, a few of those have been spectacular. Yes, but I'll take the guy that pulls down 95 balls in the year that are all routine and all for first downs. Like, I'll take that guy over the guy with injury problems, limited production, and the occasional spectacular catch. I just don't see his market value being that high, especially with Marquise Goodwin just getting paid today by the 49ers on a very team-friendly deal.
So it's a $20.3 million deal, 3-year contract extension. If you break that down, that's kind of what people have been rumoring Paul Richardson to go. That's about $7 million a year per average.
I saw a lot of $10 million a year marks people talking about. Like,
$10 million guaranteed for Marquise Goodwin.
Right. So you're guaranteed, but you're less than $10 million. You're $7 million a year or so, six and change. But the point being is that Marquise Goodwin had as many catches last year as Paul Richardson has in the last 2. Like, he's been the more productive player in, the recent times.
Sure.
And it's not like there's not enough balls to go around in Seattle these days. We're throwing the ball a heck of a lot more. So Paul Richardson's value now has to be less than Marquise Goodwin.
I don't know. Is it? Because he's hitting free agency, whereas Goodwin signed with his current team. And that usually you see people overpay for guys in free agency.
But if you're John Schneider, you don't care if he signed that as a re-up or if he signed it as a free agent. That's a chip that you play. You sit down in front of Paul Richardson's agent and you go, no, I'm not paying more than that. That's why Aaron Rodgers isn't going to have his contract redone until Kirk Cousins signs somewhere.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Even if you don't go to Marquise Goodwin level, $6 million a year, are you going to pay him just under what Marquise Goodwin's
to me, his market value is somewhere between $4 and $5 million a year. That's where I'm comfortable as a GM paying somebody like Paul Richardson.
I think he hits free agency if that's what the offer is on the table.
Good luck with that.
In terms of free agency, I don't expect the Seahawks to go out there and be big players. Danny threw out the names Justin Pugh and Josh Sitton. Really, if you're going to go for one guy, I guess a big name on the offensive line, maybe not Andrew Norwell, because I think it's going to command way too much in terms of salary dollars. There's other teams out there who can offer him more. But maybe one of those two guys does make sense. Other than that, you're looking at guys that are, bargain type guys. Like Jonathan Stewart, who doesn't count against compensatory picks, like Brian Cushing, who doesn't count. Or you're looking at filling in guys in May, potentially, after you've gone through the draft. I don't see him being very active once free agency opens.
I mean, there's a lot of factors that point to that. I mean, the cap space being one of them. But one guy I definitely don't pay is Jonathan Stewart. Like, I respect his career. I think he was a very, very good player for a long time. But he had a drop off in production last year when you look at his yards per carry. I think they went down roughly somewhere between half yard to a full yard per carry after being very consistent over his whole career. And he's hitting that age for running backs that you can't rely on that. So what? You drop $2-3 million on Jonathan Stewart, and then what? If you're trading Mike Bennett to save $2.2 million, if you're nickel and diming that much, why are you wasting $2 to $3 million on an aging running back? That makes zero sense.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I think going through the draft and getting better up front.
Again, I've said this all offseason. I am not worried about the running back crew that we have. I am worried about our offensive line crew. It all starts there. You heard Danny reiterate it. The problems are absolutely rooted in the run game. And hopefully with some scheme adjustments like Danny talked about, along with a little bit better health luck, which I think we're about due for that.
for a good luck, healthier.
Yeah. Because you think about it, sure, Averill and Chancellor and Sherman, all slightly older players getting injured. But then again, like Chris Carson, Thomas Rawls, CJ Procise, those are all really young dudes. So it's not even that they're old. We're getting hurt.
Procise is definitely due for a healthy year. I mean, come on. It's time already.
Right.
It eventually, Paul Richardson, he got it together for a year. Let's see that happen.
Right. So I kind of hope for that and hope that we spend those resources focusing on offensive line, bring in a couple guys that has a little experience. And maybe it is one of those two dudes that Danny talked about just because they have experience with Solari and his system. I don't know. There's a lot of moving pieces that are up in the air. Free agency is definitely one of them. And I don't know that. Do you think you'll see a lot of movement in free agency before the draft? Because I think anything that they do is going to be after the draft.
If they're going to spend any time in free agency, looking at big name guys, it would be one of those two offensive linemen, I think.
I think you're spot on there. So keep your fingers crossed, guys. It's going to be a wild ride over the next few weeks. But don't worry. We're going to keep coming out with podcasts every week, talk you through it. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
The hawk-pocalypse is not upon us. I promise.
and if it happens, we are going to weather the storm together.
Yes, exactly. Because we're not bandwagon fans.
And really, I mean, I've seen a couple people point out the fact too. How bad can it really get? Even if you still have a defense with Earl Thomas, with Bobby Wagner, with KJ Wright, you're still talking more Pro Bowl / all-pro level players than most teams have. And you have young, talented guys like Frank Clark and Shaquem Griffin and, potential guys like Deion Jordan who could come up and fill in behind your guys that are leaving. So I think that there's still a lot to like about a Seahawks team losing those types of players. You still have Russell Wilson. You still have Doug Baldwin. I
think as long as you have Bobby and Earl on defense, you can make a lot of things work. And I think as long as you have Russell Wilson as your quarterback with those two guys, you can make a lot of things work. This team was 9-7 last year when basically played without Sherman, Chancellor, Averill, a bunch of the stars, and still barely missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
Mainly because of kicker and a bad coaching game. That's how not far away they are from being in contention again. I mean, they were right there.
But just watch. If Richard Sherman does go, everybody's going to be on the bandwagon that the Seahawks are going to be, the third or fourth best team in the division, because they're going to look at all the moves the 49ers are making, getting Jimmy G, locked up, and
drinking the Rams Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Those are going to be the two teams that are going to be talked about as number 1 and 2. And maybe that'll benefit Seattle being the underdog, really, once again, having people doubt them.
I don't think that would hurt Pete Carroll's messaging. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah. I have a feeling that the NFC West is going to finish a lot differently than what people will predict at the beginning of the season. Let me put it to you that way.
Yep.
I have a hard time believing that after the league having a year of watching Sean McVay do his thing with Jared Goff, that they're going to explode even more onto the scene offensively. Like, I have a hard time buying that. The NFL is smart, man. Like, think about it in these terms. The Seahawks had one of the best defenses of all time when we won the Super Bowl, right? And we played just cover one, bump and run on the outside, and it was just straight up, this is what we do, simple scheme. And that worked for a year, maybe 2. And then all of a sudden, the league started figuring it out. Oh, you can hit tight ends down the seam. Oh, if you check down to your backs constantly out of the backfield, that just gobbles up this defense. Just little different things. The league is smart. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see how much further back the Rams slide this year, even though nobody seems to think that's going to happen.
And they're going to be coming due on a lot of players too. You saw Alec Ogletree. He's going to be traded. I don't know exactly how much that frees up for them in terms of their salary cap number for this year, but that they have to get Aaron Donald signed. And once they do that, you can only pay $20 million to so many players on your team. And usually it's a quarterback. And eventually they're going to end up having to pay that to Jared Goff too.
See, and that's one of the silver linings that you have as a Seahawks fan going forward, because as good as J.J. Watt was a few years ago, and I was declaring him the MVP of the league for about 2 years there, mm-hmm. I wouldn't have paid him the kind of money the Texans paid him. I would have let him go. Yeah. I don't think you can wrap up quarterback money in a defensive tackle. I just don't think you can do that and be successful long term, especially if you're going to pay a quarterback then too, that kind of money. As dominant as a player as Aaron Donald is, at his position, or J.J. Watt was at his position, I don't think you can pay him that kind of money and justify it, because everything else is going to wither around you. And the other thing too, Brandon, I mean, the Seahawks team has watched the Niners come and go. They've watched the Cardinals come and go. And here we are now starting to watch the Rams come, and they will go.
I like the optimism of that, because it assumes that we're going to be staying.
Well, yes, we will be staying.
All right, Adam. Well, getting into the second half of the show, I want to remind people that the Seahawkers annual banquet coming up. Tickets are available at seahawkers.org. Tickets this year, $65 a person, $60 for veterans, kids 12 and under 55. Yeah, Marcus Trufant's going to be coming back as your MC, and then another member of the barbershop as well. Going to be Terry T. Holla, going to be co-MCing along with Trufant.
Sweet, man. That's always a good time. I would encourage all of you that are in the area to turn out for that. Get to meet a lot of cool people, a lot of like-minded 12s. You have an amazing meal. Get to meet, hopefully meet an ex-player or two. I mean, it's
current player, yeah. Last year we had ex-players sitting at most of our tables.
Yeah.
And Thomas Rawls showed up. CJ Prosise showed up. Marcus Trufant was there emceeing. So, I mean, it was a good time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hard to do with a frown. So check it out, folks.
Another place to check out, getintheflock.com. I want to thank those of you there who are helping to support the show, 246 of you. And then, one other group that I think we pass over in terms of thanking, but those of you who subscribe via our Seahawkers podcast app and sign in for premium content there. We put in the off season, we generally put everything we can into our weekly show so we can just keep it going during the off season. We don't do much else in terms of bonus shows, but we appreciate those of you who sign up there for the premium access, and it's kind of an anonymous way to do it. And but we know you're there, so thanks to you.
Absolutely. Thank you a ton for that. Yeah, it is tough to come up with enough content just for the weekly show usually. So the bonus, maybe not quite so much, but come the season, I honestly think that the bonus shows are oftentimes more fun than the actual weekly show. Sometimes we get on some really crazy tangents, which I think many of you enjoy. At least I do.
It seems like it, and we got to go. We're working toward 300 people at getintheflock.com, and then we're going to be doing 2 shows a week. One on Sunday night after the games, and then probably on Thursday as we get toward the next game. So might change how we structure things a little bit, but it'll be fun.
If we do get to 300 little flockers, I definitely look forward to doing the Sunday podcast directly after the game, but I have to put a caveat on it because if I'm on the road working and in the middle, a lot of times I don't even get to watch the game live. Like I end up watching it the next day or something along like that. So might be a little difficult on those days, but if I'm not at the mill, I'm in.
That's right. Yeah. Adam's in.
Yeah.
A lot of, speaking of the flockers, a lot of them with the pick'em prizes got all those out finally this past week. So if you won a weekly pick'em prize, should be in the mail by now. Unless you're overseas, you might not have it quite yet. But if you've and thanks to everybody who's sent us pictures and some of you even doing
unboxing videos.
Yeah. Like Dave Bloomquist did. So
super cool.
Very cool to see that. And so, yes, if you haven't gotten your prize yet and you think you were expecting one, just let us know. But I'm pretty sure I got them out to everybody this past week.
Right on, man. I wanted to give you some big kudos for that, actually, because you put a lot of work and time into that. One, procuring just all the prizes and stuff that we give out. And I mean, we gave away a lot of stuff this year. And then to hunt everybody down, you make sure that you have the right addresses, get it all boxed up, sent out in a fairly timely manner. That's a big effort by you, and I'm just very impressed. And I think everybody should give you a pat on the back, even if they didn't get a prize like me. See, I'm not even mad, even though I didn't get a prize.
I got your poster right here.
Oh, sweet. All right. Well, there we go. Now I'm even happier. But no, good work by you, man.
I think it's the runner-up prize to losing to me and Pick'em.
Yeah, whatever, man. Happened to miss a week. That's on me.
That's okay. That's why you get a runner-up prize.
Yep. Yeah, I need to do a little better next year. But go ahead and get in the flock, folks. It's pretty awesome. Get that bonus content. Maybe get in the Ring of Honor, depending on what level you donate at. And plus, don't you want to be called a little flocker? I know you do.
You might not want to.
No, I know you do. All you little flockers.
A couple emails here. One from Nathan.
Makes you red every time. That's what's hilarious. Like I can see you over the computer monitor actually turning slightly red.
Yeah. Okay. You got me.
It's hilarious.
Email here from Nathan in Bloomfield, New York. Says, hey guys, thank you for putting out shows to help me get through the off season. I thought of an idea that could possibly help you fill your shows with a little less talk of the clearly spherical planet that we live on. I was wondering if you would rank the positions in the draft that Carroll and Schneider evaluate best to worst. Thanks again for the rants and particularly the car chase stories. Go Hawks.
That's hilarious. It's cool when you get somebody to email in and remind you about something you talked about a long time ago on the show.
Yeah. No more car chases in the past, I don't know, year. Nope.
Haven't played Dukes of Hazzard and tried to chase people down. Bad. Yeah. Haven't need to do that, but it's been better for my cars, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. But as far as the positions that maybe John Schneider and Pete Carroll place value on in the draft, let's see. I guess I had never given any prior thought, but I would say...
Well, corner, for one, they've done really well at.
But here's the thing. So you say what they prioritize, right? So picking dudes in the 5th and 6th round and hitting them there, does that mean it's a priority? Or do they just hit well on that? I mean, is the priority other positions because they continually draft those with higher draft picks?
Yeah, Nathan didn't really say anything about priority, just ranking the positions that they evaluate well.
Oh, that they evaluate well? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, corner for sure then.
Yeah, corner. Defensive line has been pretty good as of late.
Linebacker.
Quarterback's kind of, they're 100% on, so that's good. You've got to put that one up at the top, I guess.
Small sample size, but they did hit a home run. Yeah.
Small sample size. Good one.
It's true.
Enough Russell Wilson short jokes.
Oh, I wasn't even trying to be a jerk there. God, sometimes I say jerky things and I don't even know it.
Offensive line, obviously not their best. They'd probably rank that one down near the bottom.
Yep.
Wide receiver is kind of an interesting one, considering, how would you, and maybe saying we get into this a little bit later, but just, spitballing. Receiver's an interesting one because they have hit on so many undrafted guys. You think of Ricardo Lockett, Doug Baldwin, and then they've actually, for the actual drafted players, apart from Paul Richardson and Tyler Lockett, you can think of a lot of guys that were 3rd, 4th round picks that never worked out.
Yeah, I'd say that's one of their middle. Sure. If you're ranking them as far as how effective they are at evaluating those, that's one probably in the middle tier of the group there. Another position that they tend to do fairly well at when you look at it overall, include undrafted guys, is running back. Mm-hmm. They've honestly done pretty well.
Apart from Kristen Michael, right?
Yeah. Which, is he back with the team? I saw Keith Ketto over one of the listeners say stuff. I was like, that can't be true.
No, Evan, who we had on from, who writes for Hawk Blogger.
Yeah.
He likes to retweet an old tweet from, and I don't know if he does this often, but what he did in this case was a post from, 2015, 2016 from Adam Schefter saying that the Seahawks have signed running back Kristen Michael. And so when you just retweet an old tweet, it just confuses everybody. And so that's what happened. So a lot of people are confused.
You can't be doing that, bud.
Yeah, come on, Evan, do better.
All right, good. But yeah, so running back, I think would be in there. I think a position they've done poorly on outside of offensive linemen would be tight end. They haven't really drafted a difference maker at tight end their entire regime.
Just kind of in the,
just some dudes.
Just dudes, yeah.
Most successful ones being free agents, whether that be Zach Miller or Jimmy Graham.
And then linebacker, they started off really strong with KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, it's never really been a priority since drafting those guys. So
correct.
Difficult to say how.
Right.
Well, they can be back in the game this year when they draft Shaquem Griffin.
Absolutely. Oh, I want that to happen.
I do too.
I need this to happen.
Maybe you convert him to corner and then you have twins playing corner at both spots. How fun would that be?
I've heard some people talk about converting him to safety.
Yeah.
Now think about it in these terms, where somebody like Shaquem Griffin is playing the Cam Chancellor role.
I like that too.
Fast, big, a thumper.
Yeah.
That makes some sense.
It does. A guy that's...
You run 4-3-8, you could probably play strong safety.
Yeah. Well, that's what Shaquille ran.
Yeah, he's not
corner.
Yeah. He's not that different in size than Cam.
No.
What Cam's like 220?
It's very similar, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just saying.
I could see it happening.
I need this to happen.
Another email here from Mark in London says, hey guys, wanted to write you to offer a thank you for the hard work you do in making this podcast the great show that it is. I'm from the UK, and while the NFL is growing here, it's still hard to follow other than highlight shows on late night TV because of the time difference. Your show has helped me not only keep up to date with the Seahawks, but help me better understand the mechanics of the sport, the dynamics of the game, and the culture of American football as a whole. I used to be a Bills fan thanks to an ex-partner being from upstate New York, but ironically, I got tired of not making the playoffs and became a Seahawks fan at the start of last season. Thanks to my favorite wrestler, Daniel Bryan.
So he stopped being a Bills fan and they went to the playoffs?
And then they go to the playoffs.
No! Is he a jinx?
I don't know.
No. And though it became a Seahawks fan this year, it's the first year we missed the playoffs in like 4 or 5 seasons.
Uh-oh,
dude,
Mark.
This isn't looking good.
This isn't looking good. We may have found the problem.
Right. Not offensive line.
How have you held on to your Bills jersey, Mark? Do you still have your Bills jersey?
Right. Because if you do, we may need to burn those.
Or you might need to wear them and go back.
Yeah, go back to being a Bills fan.
Right.
Man, we're just ditching willing 12s right left.
I know.
Oh,
that's probably bad karma. Sorry, Mark.
Okay.
He said he became a Seahawks fan at the start of last season thanks to my favorite wrestler, Daniel Bryan, being a huge Seahawks fan.
Okay.
I'm now hoping to plan a trip to the States in late summer to not only catch some wrestling, but of course to make it to Seattle and catch a preseason game. Every game I've watched on TV has been a victory for the team, so hopefully I can continue bringing good fortune in person as long as you both keep bringing a great podcast into my feed, which I'm sure you will. And when my first paycheck lands from the new job I start in April, I'll certainly be contributing to the show financially as well. Thanks again. Go Hawks, from Mark.
Hey, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that.
We should have read that full email before he told him to go back to being a Bills fan.
Well, I hope he understands that 3/4 of what we say on here is in jest and it's a bunch of crap. So I think he gets the act.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So yeah, no, but welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for the kind words. Those are the little things that help keep us going in the off season, and congrats on the new job, dude. Congratulations on
Absolutely. And, potentially 2 games next year coming out for a preseason, then living in London.
Yeah.
He's got to be there for the Hawks Raiders game.
Well, if you and I are going, he needs to be there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, Adam. What do you say we get into some do better and better in life?
All right, dude.
My do better this week is for Dave Zirin he does the Edge of Sports podcast. He also writes for one of those websites out there. He's a writer. And because he is a writer, that's what bothered me in particular about this tweet. And he's gone on to since delete it, which I don't tweet it in the first place. Like, we've had a conversation about Twitter now multiple times on the show. Like, people seem to have a problem with this. You can think about it. You don't have to put it out right away. But when you use quotes, generally, punctuation matters. And when you use quotes, so you're attributing a comment to somebody. His original tweet, he said that Mike Lombardi said of Josh Rosen, one of the quarterbacks considered to be one of the top picks in the drafts coming up this year, quote, he has to decide whether he wants to be a humanitarian or a football player. And Zirin was asking why. The only problem is Michael Lombardi didn't say that quote. He was paraphrasing what Lombardi said.
Right.
That's not
minor
something
detail.
That's a minor detail. And then he goes back and then apologizes to Lombardi in a tweet and quotes him saying that Rosen, quote, might like humanitarian work more than football, and then uses ellipses to go on later in the sentence where he says, I don't know where his values lie. Well, the problem is, and Bill Simmons pointed this out too, yes, he's still paraphrasing him. He's using the exact quotes, but when you use an ellipses, you're leaving a lot of stuff out, and that lot of stuff is context. And so he's still taking the comments that Lombardi made on the podcast, taking those comments out of context to use them for the message that he's trying to get across. And for somebody who's in journalism, punctuation is important. And getting quotes correct and in context is important. Don't go after guys trying to trying to fit it in with your own personal agenda because it's fun. Do better.
Yeah, man, you got to do better on that stuff. Those are the fundamentals of journalism: is being accurate and quoting people correctly and with context. And here's the thing: maybe this is what you're saying, Brandon, and I didn't quite get it. Are you trying to tell me that it's hard to include nuance and context in tweets? Is that what you're trying to say? Because I don't know if this affects it or not, but it seems like only having 140 characters might limit context and nuance. That's just a guess.
They've actually you have 280 characters now.
Well, whoop-de-doo-dah-day.
It still limits context.
It limits context a ton. And so I think, especially journalists, we were talking about it earlier on the pod, man. Stay away from the Twitter as much as you can. It's death.
Especially when you're trying to use it for sources.
Yes.
And he was using a podcast as a source and trying to point something out. But I mean,
well, it's just getting sucked up into the rumor mill. And this is just like how a rumor works, right? Like he sort of almost got the quote correct, trying to get across the feeling, and then it's misinterpreted by someone else. This is how it works. This is how rumors get spread, man.
I do kind of like, though, that Bill Simmons used do better in his tweet responding to Zyron.
Do you? Because there needs to be a do better for Danny Kelly's boss at The Ringer, Bill Simmons.
What?
Yes, that's right. He's out there stealing catchphrases. He doesn't even know it. He's lambasting somebody else, and he's stealing catchphrases. I don't even know if he's aware he's doing it, but at least I know he listens now because this is easily, you can tell he's totally sinister. Like when I say keep getting them checks, I attribute that to Jalen Rose. How many times?
A million
times. because it's out of respect. And Bill Simmons doesn't do that. You talked about him reprimanding this Dave Zirin dude with a tweet, and this is what he said. Not nearly a good enough quote unquote correction. You made the first quote up in this, and this quote unquote paraphrase second version of it does not represent the context of what he said either. Do better. 1240 mark. And then he has a link to the podcast. He used my do better.
He used your do better. He didn't put an exclamation point. So it was more like a do better.
There's only one way to say do better, Brandon, and it's do better. That's the way you say it. Everybody knows it. That's my catchphrase. He's stealing it. It's a very unique set of words that nobody ever uses in other contexts whatsoever. There's no possible way somebody would use that, not knowing that it originated here. Nobody had ever heard that phrase before. So I'm mad at Bill Simmons. Do better.
I absolutely expect Bill Simmons to know where that came from and attribute it accordingly.
Yeah.
If Bill Simmons is going after Dave Zirin, expecting an apology based on a tweet, I expect Bill Simmons now to apologize to you based on this tweet.
Yeah, where's my apology, Bill? You can't believe you.
Adam deserves an apology. At Adam the Rant. Make it happen, Bill.
Yeah, make it happen. Oh, man. It was a slow week, all right?
Bill Simmons is on the clock for an at Adam the Rant apology.
Oh, yeah. He owes me big time,
Start
man.
the clock. Get it running.
That guy's a thief of intellectual content. He hasn't come up with anything original in his life ever. Not blogs and podcasts and web pages and 30 for 30 documentaries. He hasn't come up with a lick of anything individually himself. He's clearly an intellectual.
He's just out there. He's just out there, listening into team podcasts like ours to try and get original content that he can then use to turn around.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Adam, let's get on to Better at Life. Who you got?
My Better at Life is for the great white hope, Christian McCaffrey. I know I made fun of him like all year in Panthers fans and the media about the way that they talked about Christian McCaffrey in like breathless tones, but he did something pretty cool here the last couple days. He was out in the Denver area, out on a hike, and him and his friends witnessed a 72-year-old man fall about 20 feet onto a rock, busted up like his pelvis and all sorts of stuff. Let's see. He a broken pelvis, internal bleeding on the brain, 9 fractured ribs, and a broken neck.
Wow.
And Christian McCaffrey and his friends were the first people to respond quickly and, try to get him stabilized. One of his friends even ended up doing chest compressions on this man before rescue folks got there. And so for springing into action and saving a man's life, Christian McCaffrey is better at life than Skip Bayless. Pretty amazing. A lot of people don't have the wherewithal to spring into action and do something. Like their first reaction is, go get somebody else and to solve the problem instead of going there and trying to solve it themselves and save the life in the process. So very cool by him. Very cool.
Well, my better life this week is for a person that, yes, I'm sure he's caused some controversy in Seattle over the past years. Now he's on his way to the Philadelphia Eagles. And I wanted to recognize Michael Bennett for his contributions in Seattle over the years, helping bring a Super Bowl championship to Seattle, and had a really nice message on his way out the door that I want to read. He says, "Dear Seattle 12s, you have meant so much to me and my family. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. First and foremost, I want to thank my wife and family for always supporting me and helping guide me in every situation. My wife is the backbone of our family, and I am truly blessed to have her and our 3 daughters. I, of course, want to thank Paul Allen, Pete Carroll, John Schneider, Peter McLaughlin, Eric Kennedy, and Mo Kelly for bringing me to the Seahawks and giving me the opportunity to help bring Seattle their first championship. My teammates, my brothers. More important than any championship or ring are the relationships I have made with the men in the locker room. We experienced marriages, births, deaths, and everything in between, and those are the moments I will cherish forever. Last but certainly not least, to the city of Seattle, one of the best in the world. You fans are world class. The way you support us players on and off the field, helping build bridges across our communities and understand what it means to give back and be community minded. I am forever grateful for allowing me to grow and evolve in this time that I have had with you. I expanded my family in the city. I had one of my babies here. This truly was home for us, and it's been such an incredible 5 years. I want to assure you that the work we have started here with the Bennett Family Foundation will not stop. We are committed to the city, community, and the schools we serve. It's been a blessing to be able to meet so many great people through our work and share our passion and dedication to better the world, and we look forward to meeting so many more of you. We are just getting started. We thank you. We love you. God bless. Love, Black Santa." Yes, Adam, it's signed Black Santa.
Awesome.
So, to Michael Bennett, Black Santa, better at life than Skip Bayless.
Yeah, man, a guy that is very instrumental to bringing us all our first ring. And he's going to have to go down as one of the best defensive linemen in Seahawks history, right? Like him, Jacob Green, Cortez Kennedy. Like
Michael Sinclair, yeah.
Michael Sinclair. Like, they kind of have to be in that breath,
Joe
right?
Nash, yeah.
Joe Nash, you betcha. Absolutely, Joe Nash. So we appreciate his time and his effort when he was here. I know a lot of people really dislike him for his personal beliefs, but take into account the amount of pain that he played through on a bad foot year in, year out. You'd see him go down and you'd be like, oh crap, he's hurt. And yet somehow go out there and gut it out. And it's that kind of heart and tenacity and commitment to his fellow players and to the 12s that I think we should always cherish. And I hope his time in Philly is rewarding for him personally. I hope that they don't win any more titles because that means we're not winning one.
Right.
But I appreciate his time here. And he'll be a player that I will remember for the rest of my life in a Seahawks uniform, no doubt about it.
I'm always going to have that memory of him riding around on the bicycle after the NFC Championship game against Green Bay. That was just one of the all-time great Seahawks moments.
Yeah, and kind of a goofball, man, and that obviously speaks to me.
Yeah,
and he was a player personality that I related to very well, just with his sense of humor. So he'll be missed. He'll be missed.
Absolutely. And with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. You saw it here. You heard it here first.
Proof.
Yeah.
Proof positive. Right here.
Heard it here first, folks. Man, that was a hard phrase today.
You have a hard time saying that. Just don't say that anymore.
Have I struggled with that in the past?
Yes, that's at least the second time in the last, 4 weeks.
All
that
right.
You haven't been able to say heard it here first.
I'm eliminating. I can't say no. I'm eliminating that from the lexicon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you eliminate too.
I'll eliminating. Yeah, that's not. Wow. Let's wrap this up. Let's get to Better at Life because apparently the struggle fest is on for me.
Adam is struggling. Just like Joe Namath.
I am.